I've heard it said that if you find a job that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, this is excellent advice for finding a job. Most of us would like to retire at some point. We've been conditioned to associate our retirement with a certain age, but it's actually more related to your income. My dad instructed me to make sure you save for retirement, but he never went into how to do so. Consequently, I never learned about the accounts in this video until my late 30s, which has really hampered my portfolio. Hopefully, I can help you avoid the same issues that I had. I'd like to talk to you today about the different accounts available as kind of an introduction to define, give us a basis for what to discuss in earlier videos. I'm trying to keep these videos shorter to help reach the more of the target younger audience that I would like. Especially with this one, retirement saving is very heavily based on time. You can save money, but the best way to invest for your retirement is to let time work for you. I don't want to get too much into strategies and tactics, but every dollar that you invest at age 20 is worth, if you assume a 4% gain, is worth about $5.84 by the time you're 65. So that's every dollar you put in when you're 20 years old multiplies almost by 6 by the time you're ready to retire. As opposed to if you wait until you're 30, it drops drastically to $3.95. And if you're waiting until you're 50, every dollar you invest is only worth $1.80 by the time you retire. So you can see you really need to get in early. If you were to put in $10 or $10,000 a year from the time you're 25 to 40, and then just stop investing at 40, at a 6% rate of return, you'll be a millionaire by the time you retire at 65. $1.05 million. If you did the same thing from the ages 35 to 65, $10,000 a year, but for 30 years, but later in your life, you're not even going to break $1 million. Even though you invested twice the amount of money, you're only going to have $838,000. So it is essential that you invest early in your retirement. There are many different types of investment accounts. When you're looking at retirement accounts, most of them have to do with some kind of a tax break, because the government realizes you're putting your time in the workforce, and you're trying to put money aside so that you don't basically die on the job. You want to put your time in, but the principle is after you've put your time in, you've earned some time to just kick back and relax. So they've set up certain accounts, certain types of accounts, to allow you to get tax breaks when you are inevitably on a limited income after you retire. There's a traditional 401k, there's a Roth 401k, a traditional IRA, a Roth IRA, and then a couple of specialty types as well that I'll briefly touch on. Basically, these are all just ways to invest in the stock market, but they've got a little bit more restriction because they're not supposed to be a substitution for your regular investment. They're just a way to dodge some taxes whenever you retire. All of these accounts, you cannot take distributions from until you're at least 59 and a half. Because, again, they're designed to be retirement accounts. They're not designed to be accounts that you can make money for at any time in your life. Again, I just want to talk about the actual accounts in this video, and we'll talk about the strategies and how to actually use them later on. The first one and the main one that most people have heard of is the 401k. 401k is a retirement account that is linked to your employer. So if you have a job, most of the time it'll be a full-time job. On occasion, you'll find part-time jobs that offer this, but it's a lot more common for a full-time. 401ks, a traditional 401k is tax deductible, which means any money that you put in, usually it just comes straight out of your paycheck. You don't even see it. You don't get taxed on it. So if you make, for the sake of math, we'll say you make $100,000 a year in a year, and you put $10,000 into your 401k. Well, the government is going to ignore that $10,000, and they're only going to tax you on the other $90,000. So that's what tax deductible means. It means it's deducted from the amount that you're taxed on. Now, the flip side is whenever you take distributions from a traditional 401k, you're going to get taxed on that just like you had earned it from your job. But at least you don't have to get taxed on what you invest in it like you would if you were just doing a standard stock brokerage account. Then you would have to get taxed on the full $100,000 that you made, put your $10,000 in, and then anything that you made on top of that $10,000. If at the end of your first year you invested $10,000 and you made at the end of your first year you're at $15,000, then you get taxed on the extra $5,000 as well. So it's a little bit easier. Anything that you put in is tax free. You can usually do what's called rollovers, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. But it's a way to transfer from your 401k for your current job. Either if you quit that job or leave that job and you get another one, you might be able to roll over your 401k into the 401k for your new job, since they're linked to an employer. You would have to start a new 401k for every job you have. Or if you prefer to have an IRA, you might be able to roll that over into that as well, which we'll discuss that. That's the next type of account. 401ks have a maximum amount you can invest in a year. And these investment caps, an IRA has the same thing, but a different amount. They increase slightly every year to try and account for inflation. For this year, it's $20,500 is your 401k cap. And that is a cap of the sum of all of your types of 401ks. So let's say you've got two different jobs that have 401ks. You got a full-time job, and then you got some sort of a unionized part-time job that offers a 401k as well. And so you have two different traditional 401ks. And let's say you've got a Roth 401k, which we'll discuss that as well. So you've got three different 401ks. Well, you can invest up to a total of $20,500 across all three of those 401k accounts. There's a 10% penalty for taking distributions from your 401k account, your traditional 401k account, prior to 59 and a half years old. And in addition to that, you have to pay the taxes because you pay taxes on distribution. So you really, really don't, I mean, you can use it as a pinch. That's what you've heard of people do. They cash out their 401ks. That would be what this is talking about. They've had to pay the taxes on that plus an additional 10%, which is really, really tough to stomach. So especially since that's your retirement. That's the money that you're using for being able to lay back and relax after 5 decades worth of toil and labor. So that should be a last resort. A lot of 401ks, if you do need money in a pinch, will actually allow you to take out a loan against your 401k, and they'll have certain restrictions and certain policies. So if that's something you're interested in, and you have a 401k, go ahead and look into the details with your investor, and you'll probably be able to find out the information on how to access that through your HR department. if you've never done it before. But the cool thing about that is you're actually borrowing from yourself. So if you've got $40,000 in your 401k balance, you might be able to take a $20,000 loan out, and then you'll have 5 years or whatever the term is to pay it back. And any interest, at least in my own personal 401k, any interest that I accrue actually gets added back into my 401k balance. I'm paying the interest back to myself. The downside is that $20,000 that I just borrowed, that's no longer in my 401k making interest or gaining value in the stock market. So that interest that you're paying back to yourself kind of helps cover that. But do remember that if you're hoping to be gaining in the stock market, you're not doing that while you've borrowed that money. But it's still better than taking that 10% hit plus your taxes for just cashing out. Another thing about 401ks that's really cool is employers a lot of times will offer some sort of a matching policy. For my personal employer, they will match half of your contribution up to 3%. So anyone that I work with, I always recommend immediately go into your 401k the second you get access to it and bump it up to 6%. Because that way you're getting the maximum amount of free money from your employer. It's not a bad thing. It's an excellent thing. It's something that your employer wants you to do because they want you to be able to retire at some point. They don't want you to die on the job. That's horrible press. They want you to put your time in, benefit the company, and then as your production starts to decline, they want you to be in a position where you can retire, and they're willing to pay out to do it. That's a perk. That's a loyalty thing. And especially if you are in a job, and I know there's jobs out there where the workers have the opinion of the company that they just don't care about you and they want to work you to death. But there's a lot of jobs out there that aren't like that. There's a lot of jobs out there where the top brass in the job they care just as much about you as you care about yourself. So they want you to be successful. They want you to be healthy, and they want you to be able to kick back eventually. So if you have that option, max it out because it's free money. I mean, if you put if you make $100,000 a year and you're able to get up to 3%, that's $3,000 a year that your company is just giving you. Take it, and all you have to do to get it is invest more in your retirement. That's a no-brainer to me. You're at some point in time with a 401k, a traditional one, you're required to take distributions. That way, the government doesn't want you to have a big balance in your 401k when you die. That's completely opposite, contrary to the purpose of a 401k. It's there so you take money out when you retire. So you're required somewhere between 70 and 72 years old you have to start taking contributions out. And it's a relatively small amount, but they make it so you do. There are a lot of times limits on the 401ks are a lot of times very restrictive on how you can invest your money. They might have it might be as simplified as you just get to pick risky, conservative, or in the middle, and you just have a slider bar and then they do all the other stuff. Or you might have a little bit more freedom and maybe you have a handful of mutual funds or something that you can invest in, but a lot of times they're very restrictive on how you can invest your money. If you don't like that, another option is an IRA. And you can either start an IRA yourself or you can roll your 401k into an IRA. That way that will give you a little bit more freedom. You will have to check with your policies on your 401k to see what's allowed as far as rollovers. But an IRA is another type of investment account. It parallels very closely. A traditional IRA will parallel a traditional 401k, but it is linked to an individual or a broker. My own personal IRA is through Charles Schwab, which is one of the biggest investing firms. They're not sponsoring my video. I'm just giving you some basic information. There is a much lower contribution limit for a personal IRA. You remember I said 401ks are $20,500 total across all 401ks you have. IRA is only $6,000. And actually with both, you can contribute more if you're over 50. So the 401k was $20,500. You can contribute another $7,500 a year if you're over 50. That way, if you got a late start, you can really beef it up and pound a lot more in if you really want to. And then it's the same with a traditional IRA. It's normally $6,000. If you're over 50, you can put an extra $1,000 a year in. Same thing with the 401k. If you are investing yourself and not rolling over, you can put your tax on your distributions, not on the investment. So it is tax deductible. Now, it's a little bit more hands-on. It's a little bit more manual. The 401k, it all shows up on your pay stub. The government already knows about it. It's all done. With a traditional 401k, you're actually going to show on your pay stub that you're getting taxed on it. And then when you go in to do your taxes at the beginning of the year, your income taxes, you'll put this down as something that you can deduct, one of your deductions. So it's a little bit more hands-on, but again, it can be done. And there are more investment options. So traditional IRA, you'll have a lot more mutual funds, stocks. You might actually be able to play with cryptos. It depends on what IRA you get, what broker, or what level. There's probably going to be, I know I don't use it right now, but I have the option to have a investment service where they'll automatically manage my investments to try and gain me as much as possible. That's probably something, since I have not been able to delve very deeply into being able to invest skillfully myself yet. That's something that I would love to learn and plan to. And then hopefully I'll be able to do a video on that in the future. But I'll probably use that automated investor in the meantime. Make sure that you look at the fees charged, but if they charge 0.5% APR to do your use the auto investor, and he's able to gain you 7% a year, then that's 6.5% gain, and that's huge. That's again a no-brainer. There's a special category, both in a 401k and in an IRA, that may be available to you. And there are restrictions depending, but it's called a Roth. There's a Roth 401k that might be offered by your employer. My research indicates that a lot of employers now are beginning to offer Roth 401ks. And then depending on your income level, because there's an income cap, you might be able to get a Roth or a Roth IRA as well. So a Roth 401k kind of turns your investment backwards. So instead of being able to have your investment be tax deductible and then get taxed on your distributions, it's on the opposite end. Your investments are not tax deductible. So if you make $100,000 in a year, you put $10,000 in your Roth 401k. You still have to pay taxes on the whole $100,000. The flip side is when you get to retirement age, all of that is tax-free. all of it. So if you really, really, really pound out investing in your Roth 401k, and I believe there was figures that I looked at. For example, if you were to start at 18, let's say you get a job at the steel mill right at 18, and you put $6,000 a year, which is with that kind of income, $500 a month is pennies. It's pocket change. So you put $6,000 a year in from the time you're 18 until the time you're 65. Assuming you can get, and I think it was based on a 7% increase, which is not unreasonable. That's a pretty standard increase for like the S&P 500 on an annual basis. If you can get that 7% increase on a regular basis, you will have, by the time you're 65, invested $250,000, and your portfolio will be worth over $2 million. 8 times what you invested. And if it was a Roth 401k, you paid taxes on the front end, which means anything you take out of that $2 million, that's yours. The government can't take a penny out of it. That's it. That's all yours. So that's the power of a Roth IRA. Now, your restriction with that is your employer may not even offer it. Mine does, which I think is really cool. And I'm splitting mine up a little bit because there are, I don't want to get too much into strategies, but we'll go into that. There's a way that you can really kind of work the system, game the system, and dodge almost all of your taxes. It's a really cool principle, and I'm really excited to talk about it, but that's going to go in your next video, or in my next video on this, because I don't want this to get too long. So you're taxed on going in. It's mostly the same as a traditional 401k. There's going to be limits on your options for investing and so on and so forth. Again, your limit is across all of your 401ks. So your Roth IRA plus your traditional IRA plus any, wow, I'm tired today. Your Roth 401k plus your traditional 401k plus any other jobs 401ks or that you might have. So that's $20,500 plus another $7,500 if you're over 50. Another cool thing about the Roth 401k is your contributions. That means the money that you actually invest in it, as opposed to the money that you earn from investing in the market. The contributions can be withdrawn penalty-free after 5 years. So let's say you're putting $6,000 a year in, just because it's an easy number that I use a lot. And 6 years after you start investing, your car just completely takes a crap on you. Well, your first and second year have been in there for 5 years. So technically, you could go and take $12,000 out. Your $6,000 from your first year and your $6,000 from your second year. You could take $12,000 out to go buy a car or put a down payment on a car. Penalty free. It's a Roth, so you pay the taxes, the income taxes on it before you put it in. And there's no penalty because it's been in there for 5 years. Now, you can't take the contributions that you've earned off of those out, but on a rolling basis, every 5 years, after you've invested something, you can take that back out penalty free. So that's a really, really cool principle. I don't believe most of them allow you to take a loan out, but that's kind of the consolation. You can't take a loan out, but you can take the contributions out after a time. Now, just as your traditional 401k has its IRA counterpart, so does the Roth. There is a Roth IRA, and it does behave a little bit differently. It's similar to a regular IRA, just like a Roth 401k is similar to a traditional. But again, you're taxed on the way in instead of on the way out. Your total limit, again, is the same across all IRAs, Roth and traditional, and you can actually have IRAs with as many different, you can have as many of them as you want. You can have 8 different IRAs if you want, but your max is $6,000 a year, $1,000 more if you're over 50. And again, same thing with the 401ks. That kind of creeps up to keep pace with inflation, ideally. So next year it might be $6,050 or something like that. The catch on the Roth IRA is it is actually capped based on your income. So you could be restricted or completely prevented from investing in a Roth IRA if your income is more than $139,000 a year as an individual, or $260,000 as a couple. So that's something to look into, and it kind of tapers down on a scale, but eventually it'll get to a point where you're not even allowed to, your max contribution on a Roth IRA is just zero. You're not allowed to put into it at all. Now, you might still be able to roll over. If you want to roll over from your Roth 401k into a Roth IRA, that might still be a possibility. Again, you'll have to look at your policies and procedures for that. Another cool thing that you can do with a Roth IRA is you don't even have that 5-year limit. Your contributions can be taken out at any time. If I put $6,000 in today and then next week my water heater dies and I need to take money out to go and get an entirely new water heater, I can take any contributions out. Now I can't take the earnings out, what I earn based on the investment, but anything I directly put in, I can take out. The catch is you want to be really careful, especially with such a low limit. You can only put $6,000 in. If I were to put my $6,000 in today, and then next week I need to pull that $6,000 back out to buy a new HVAC, I can't go back the following week and put another $6,000 in. I already put $6,000 in. So you're really, really hampering yourself on your earning potential when you pull money out of a Roth IRA. Another really cool thing about a Roth IRA is your deadline to invest is actually the tax deadline, not the last day of the calendar year, like it is with a lot of other investments. So if you're a little bit tight on funds for the year, but you still want to make sure you put your money in, you got an extra 4 months to save up, because it's not due until, what is it, April 15th or something like that, April 13th. I don't remember what the day is. But yeah, you've got an extra couple of months to save your money up and kind of get caught up. So that's really cool. There's a couple of specialty accounts that I want to touch on. They don't apply to very many people, but if they do apply to you, it's definitely something to look into. There's something called an SEP IRA for self-employed people, and it has a much higher cap. It's $57,000 or 25% of your income, whichever is less, to help with people that don't have like an employee matching program or the benefits from that. That's so that even if you're self-employed, for example, if I'm blessed enough that this YouTube channel takes off and 5 years down the road I've got 1.3 million people that like to watch me talk, which is unfathomable but would be really cool, and this is my sole income, that would be something that I definitely would need to look into. There's also a 403B, which is for not-for-profits and I believe government employees, such as teachers. One of the benefits of that is you can invest a little bit more every year if you have a lot of tenure. So 15 plus years with the same company, you might be able to put an additional $3,000 a year in, something like that. There are probably a few other types of investment accounts that I missed that are very specialized. If you are in a specific circumstance or you're just curious about it, I highly encourage you to go look it up, check it out, see if there's anything else you can use to your benefit. Rollovers. I've mentioned rollovers. Basically, all that is a transference of balance from one account to another. The most common you'll find is if someone has a career and for whatever reason they no longer have that career with that company. Maybe their company got bought out, they got laid off. Maybe when their company got bought out, they changed investment policies, and instead of being with Merrill Lynch, they're with Charles Schwab. And instead of transferring, buying the actual account out, they just started a whole new one. Maybe the employee left the company due to whatever reason. Maybe you don't like the options, the investment options of your 401k. I've mentioned they can be kind of restrictive. You can roll, sometimes if you change companies, you can roll your old 401k, you can roll it over into your new 401k. Now, you're always you still have access to your old 401k. You can just leave it as it is, continue investing with that 401k, and you just can't contribute to it anymore because it's based on a paycheck that you no longer receive. Or you can roll it, like that would be if you really like the investment options and you're doing really well, you're gaining 7 or 8% a year on that, you may want to just leave it alone. Or if you don't like it and you want to roll it over, or you want to consolidate and you only want one account to log into, you can roll that over into your new job's 401k, possibly. You got to check with your policies. And then you only have one account. There's usually, as long as you're going a traditional 401k to another traditional 401k or to a traditional IRA, there's usually not any penalties or anything like that. Same with Roths. If you're staying within the Roth category, from a Roth 401k to a different Roth 401k or to a Roth IRA, there's usually no penalties or taxes involved. However, if you're going from a traditional to a Roth, remember, traditional, you didn't pay taxes up front. Roth, you did. So if you are going from a traditional to a Roth, you're going to probably have to pay income taxes on the balance. So that's going to kind of sap a little bit, which is a tough hit to swallow. So that's definitely something to consider. And again, same thing. You might even be able to roll your current 401k for your current job into an IRA if you want it for the investment options. So I hope you understood a lot of this. Please feel free if you have questions, if I was unclear on anything. Questions, comments, that's what that section's for. Please start early. Even if you really don't know what you're doing, get started early. Put money in. Start making money because, like I said, the investments you do are vastly more valuable at a younger age than they are at an older age. We'll talk definitely more about strategy in my next video and different things you can do to maximize your investments. There's ways, like I mentioned, to structure your investments and your distributions so you can dodge almost all of the taxes, which I think is really cool. I like manipulating things. I like getting the most out of my money, getting the most value out of it. So they're all different accounts, and every single one of them has value, and we'll use those in our strategies. Do your own research. You know, if you don't want to wait for my next video, I encourage you not to. YouTube is a vast wealth of knowledge, and that's where honestly a lot of my knowledge on the topic came from, is from going on and finding a lot of different people who have information, and don't just trust one person. I highly encourage you to go on YouTube, go on the internet, go to Investopedia.com, which is like Wikipedia for investors, and just research, investigate, check it all out. You can learn so much, and just do something. Invest. Anything is better than nothing. So, thanks for tuning in. If you like what you saw, hit that like button, subscribe, so you can see easily any videos that I post. Hit that notification bell if you want to get a push notification for anytime I post new videos. I try and post on Mondays. Glad to have you here, and have a great day.